Hi everyone, welcome to Nithrania Game Club. My name is Branislav Berec and you're watching Game in a Nutshell, series of videos where we teach how to play board games. Today we're taking a look at the Dice Settlers from NSKN Games. In the game of Dice Settlers, players will build their pool of dice and then use those dice and their symbols to perform various actions, to explore the map, take control of various map tiles to get these victory points, gain resources which they would sell for more victory points, or they could use resources to research these technologies which give them many benefits and victory points. The player who collects the most victory points will be the winner. First, each player chooses a color, takes one player board and takes all the player markers of his color. Also take 6 cubes or 6 tents in your color. Then take this dice tracker and then place another tent or another cube from the general supply to the number 3 on the tracker. For now, leave all the remaining cubes or tents and the houses in the general supply. Then take 3 white dice, 1 yellow and 1 green die, and put them into the bag of your color. All unused white dice are then removed from the game. Take the map tiles and separate the ones with this background. These are starting map tiles. Shuffle them and deal 3 tiles to the first player. He has to choose one of them and passes the other 2 tiles to the next player in the clockwise order. Next player then takes another tile from those starting tiles so that he has 3 tiles in total. He has to pick 1 tile as well and forwards the other 2 to the next player. Next player again draws another tile, has to choose one of those and discards all other tiles. Once all players have chosen their starting tile, put all other starting tiles back into the box. First player places his tile somewhere onto the table. The second player places his tile adjacent to the tile of the first player. Third player has to place his starting tile so that it is adjacent to both of the previous tiles. In a 4-player game, the fourth player would have to place his tile so that it is adjacent to at least 2 other starting tiles. So he could place it here, or over here. Then each player takes one of his tents from the personal supply and places the tent on his starting tile. If the tile provides a bonus, take that bonus immediately. At the back of the rulebook you can find the list of all the tiles and their bonuses. All the remaining tiles have this background and each tile has a small number printed here. If you play a 3-player game, take out the tiles numbered 35 to 40. If you play a 2-player game, remove the tiles numbered 27 to 40 from the game. We are setting up a 3-player game, so we will only remove these tiles. Put those tiles into the box, they will not be used in the game. Then shuffle all the tiles that will be used in the game and place them face down onto the table. Then, in each game, you will use 9 technology cards. For your first game, use the recommended pre-made set of cards which you can find at the back of the rulebook. For other games, you can use other pre-made sets, or you can use 9 random cards, but following these recommendation in the technology setup in the rulebook. Finally, prepare the victory point supply using 48 victory points for the 4-player game, 39 for a 3-player game, and 30 victory points for a 2-player game. If you play a 2-player game, take out 2 dice of each color and return them back into the box. They will not be used. If you play a 3-player game, only take out 1 die of each color and put it back to the box. And if you play a 4-player game, you can use all the dice. The game is divided into rounds, and each round has 3 phases. In the first phase, players will roll their dice. In a second phase, players will use these icons and perform various actions. And the third phase is a cleanup phase. Now, we'll cover each phase in more detail. First of all, check your dice quota. Each player starts with the basic quota of 3 dice. This quota can be increased to a maximum of 9 dice. If you have your marker on a technology that gives you this symbol, you can increase your quota by 1. If you control map tiles with the same symbol, you can again increase your quota by 1. You control a tile if you have house on that tile, or if nobody has a house on the tile, you have most tents on the tile, or at least you share the majority with someone else. If there was a tile like this on the map with this bigger and a smaller settler, you only need to have a presence on that tile to increase your quota. Presence means you either have a tent or a house on the tile, but you don't have to control that. Even if someone else would have a house there and this person would control the tile, you still have the presence and you would increase your quota. Let's say you have a quota of 4 dice. Take your bag and draw 4 dice randomly. You would now roll these dice, place them into the active dice area, and keep all the remaining dice in the bag. When you use your dice during the action phase, you would move them down to the spent dice area. Now let's say on your next turn you still have 4 dice quota, but there's only 1 die left in the bag. Take all the dice in the spent dice area, put them back into the bag, and randomly draw additional dice up to your dice quota. This is the only moment when you can take the dice from this spent dice area and put them back into the bag. Now take all those dice, roll them and place them into the active dice area. Again, keep other remaining dice in the bag. For the sake of demonstration, let's pretend we have more dice in our bag. As you can see on this player aid on the player board, you can spend these pioneer symbols or resources symbols to manipulate your dice. First, you can spend a pioneer symbol to re-roll 3 other dice. When you spend a die, you put it into this spent dice area, and then you can perform the action. So I can re-roll these 3 dice. Another way of using this pioneer symbol is to spend the die and set any other die to any phase you want. Now, if I would roll a resource symbol, any resource, that means a pumpkin, wood, iron or a gold, I can spend that icon, which means it goes to the spent area. Now I can randomly draw 2 more dice from the bag and roll them. If you would decide to spend the resource and put it into the spent dice area and draw more dice from the bag, but there is no more available, you cannot put these dice into the bag now. That might create infinite loops, and that's why it's forbidden. And similar to pioneer action, if you decide to spend 1 resource icon and put it into the spent dice area, you can take 1 die of your choice and set it to any phase you want. The action phase starts with the first player, and then all other players in a clockwise order must perform 1 action. Then again, the first player may take a second action. Now, both actions must be different. If the first action would be a settle action, the second action cannot be settle. It must be something else. For example, research. Then the second player again may take a second action, and again those actions must be different. So if the first one was recruit, the second could be harvest. Some tiles can give you additional actions and that must be performed immediately. Again, even the third action must be different from the previous two ones, so it couldn't be harvest, it couldn't be recruit, it could be, for example, research. And again, a third player may play a second action. Now let's take a look at what actions you can take. When you take the recruit action, which is this symbol, you take the dice from the active area, put them into the spent dice area, and you can choose new dice from the general supply. You can only recruit the dice of a color corresponding to the tiles where you have the presence. So the blue player can only recruit gray dice and green dice. Red player can actually only recruit green dice at the moment, and the black player can only recruit yellow dice. If you spend one die with the recruit symbol, you can add one more die into your pool and the die goes into the spent dice area. If you manage to spend 3 recruit symbols, you can add 2 more dice into your workforce. And if you somehow manage to spend 6 recruit symbols, you can add 3 dice to your workforce. Again, all these new dice go to your spent area. When you take the explore action, which is this symbol, for each die you spend and put into your spent area, draw 1 tile from the tile deck. Now choose one that you will keep and put all other tiles back into the box. Now add the new tile to the map, and it has to meet 2 conditions. First, it has to be adjacent to the tile where you already have a presence. Second, it must be adjacent to at least 2 other tiles. Now take 1 tent from the general supply, not from your personal, but from the general supply, and place it onto the new tile. Now all other players from the neighboring tiles may add 1 tent to that tile as well. They have to take it from their personal supply and add it to the tile. And now you may take another tent from your personal supply and add it to the same tile. So when you play the explore action and you place a new tile on the board, you start with the control of that tile. If you place a new tile on the map and you place your tent on that tile, if the tile provides you with some immediate benefits, take that benefit now. So in this case, a blue player would get a wood token. You can place that token on your player board. When you take the settle action, which is this symbol, for each die that you put into the spent dice area, you can perform one of these 4 actions. For 1 die, you can take 1 tent from the general supply into your personal supply. Or you can take a tent from your personal supply and place it on a tile where you already have a presence. Or you can take a tent from your personal supply and place it to a tile which is adjacent to other tile where you already have a presence. You can do these actions one after another, so during the same turn, because blue player has a presence here already, he could place another tent to this tile. The 4th option allows player to take any number of tents from the map, but not houses, and return these tents back to his personal supply. At any time during your turn, if you have 3 more tents than any other player on a tile, so in this case black player has 2 and the blue player has 5, which is 3 more than 2, player can remove 3 tents from that tile, return them back to the general supply, and take 1 house and put it on that tile, which grants blue player a permanent control over that tile. No other player can place house onto that tile. When you play the raid action, which is this symbol, for each die you spend, you can replace an opponent's tent with your own one. You can only do that on the tile where you have the presence, and you must have tents in your personal supply. Take the tent from a personal supply, place it on a selected tile and remove the opponent's tent. Place the opponent's tent back to his own personal supply. This can result in you having 3 more tents than anyone else on a tile, so you can put a house there. When you take the harvest action, for each resource icon you spent, and they can be different resources, take one corresponding icon into your supply. Put the spent dice into the spent area. Resources are necessary for researching technologies and for trade. When you take the trade action, which is this symbol, for each die you spend, you may perform 1 transaction. So for 3 dice, I can perform 3 transactions. There are 4 types of transactions. First, if you take 3 identical resources, you will get 6 victory points. If you trade 3 resources which are not identical, you get 5 victory points. Gold is a wild resource, so I could sell iron, iron and gold as 3 iron and get another 6 victory points. If you sell any 2 resources, even identical, you get 2 victory points. And finally, when you remove 1 die, either from the active dice area or a spent dice area, you have to remove that die from the game completely and you get 3 victory points in return. Research action allows players to research technologies. Research action allows players to place their markers on technologies. Each technology card gives you certain benefits and advantages. When taking the research action, you can research maximum 1 technology per turn. In addition, you have to meet these terrain requirements if necessary, and then pay the costs which are over here. If there is a terrain requirement, for each tile depicted, you have to have a presence on at least 1 tile of that color. So you would have to have a presence on the orange and a brown tile as well. In addition, you need to pay this cost. So in this case, you need to spend 2 research icons from the active area and put them to the spent dice area. Now you can take one of your markers and place it on the technology card. You can now start using the benefits of the card and you will get this number of victory points at the end of the game. Some technology cards have a cost of research icons and resource tokens. So in addition to the 2 research icons, you need to spend 2 resource tokens. These cannot be dice, they have to be physical tokens. So you take the tokens, return them to the general supply, and you can place your marker on the card. There can be markers of multiple players on each card, and if the card has this one-time symbol, you can only use it once per round. To indicate that you have used the effect in this round, simply flip the token to the other side. At any time during your turn, if you have 2 pioneer icons in your active dice area, you can use these 2 pioneers as if they were any other icon, except for gold. So if I would play the settle action, this would be 1 settle icon, and this could be another settle icon. If you have your tents on the tile with this factory icon, you can remove 1 tent and put it back to your personal supply and immediately use the benefit of that factory. You may only use 1 factory once per round, so when you use it, place your marker there to indicate it was used this round already. For the full list of the effects, please look at the last page of the rulebook. At the end of the round, if you still have any dice left in the active dice area, you may keep one of those dice in the active area and put all others into the spent dice area. This die will not be rolled next turn, but will be available for you in this active area. Then flip all the markers that have been used to their active side and move the first player marker to the player to the left. Now, at the end of the round, check if any endgame conditions have been triggered. If the initial victory point supply runs out, or if someone built 5th house, or if the stack of map tiles has run out, or if the general supply of the dice only has 2 or fewer colors remaining, play one more round and then the game will be over. Use this scoring pad to count the victory points. First, award victory points for controlling the map tiles. If a map tile has this victory point symbol, the player who controls that tile gets the higher number of victory points, and the player in the second place, and this time the black one, gets the lower number of victory points. If more players share the majority, in this case when both blue and red player have the majority, they both will be awarded 6 points and a black player will get 2 points. In this kind of situation, blue player will be awarded 4 points and both red and black will get 1 point. Second, award victory point for technology cards. On each card, all players who have markers on that card will get this number of victory points. For this card, only blue player will be awarded these victory points. Then award victory points for number of dice. Count all the dice you have, and that's either in the active area or spent area or in the bag, and then score 3 victory points for each pair of dice you own. So in this case, it's 15 victory points. Then each player will score a certain amount of points depending on number of houses he has built. So for 3 houses on the map, it would be 9 points. And finally, add the victory points from victory point tokens. The player with the most points wins the game. And that's how you play Dice Settlers. If you have any questions or comments, please put them into the comment sections below. I would be more than happy to answer your questions. If you like the video and if you like the show, please subscribe. My name is Branislav Berec. Until next time, you'll be watching Game in a Nutshell.